Hi, I'm Dr. Matthew, and this is Dr. Michael, and we are going to be talking to you about the art instead of the science of muscle testing and applied kinesiology, right? The art of it. We always talk about the questions and getting into that, but we want to give you a summation of 40 years of experience with muscle testing and the evolution of where he started and where he is today, because I think this will help you kind of grasp and really see what you're supposed to be doing and setting your intention for when you're actually doing the science of muscle testing, literally doing it. Okay, let's get started. So what was it like first getting introduced to muscle testing by Dr. Mortar?
Well, it was a foreign world, to be honest. You know, he was a great healer, and he had a very strong chiropractic background. And the basis of chiropractic is that you eliminate subluxations from the spine, and then the divine can flow freely through the body. And then potentially, with good nutrition and other aspects, you can heal almost anything. So the philosophy of chiropractic was really instrumental in me being able to grasp and then run with the advancement of kinesiology. So at first it was, like I said, it was a little difficult to wrap your head around that I'm going to receive answers from the divine. But as I became more comfortable with it and allowed that information to flow, you start seeing miracles.
So what kind of tools did you apply to remove yourself from that thought of it being difficult, that you're going to just receive answers from the divine?
Well, to be very transparent and honest, I've been on a spiritual path for about 50 years, and I have a great connection with nature and spirit and God, and understand that that permeates everything, and that on all spiritual paths, part of the goal is to eliminate the identity with the ego and conquering habits. And so every time you do that, you allow more divinity into your life. And as my mentor used to say to me, and still does, you know, the journey is kind of simple. The whole goal is to conquer yourself, because then all that's left is the beauty of creation. And then once you merge with that, you'll constantly be facilitating and a part of the miracle of life.
So you're saying the more that you really conquered yourself, the better your muscle testing got.
Yes.
So the more clear you got on removing all these preconceived ideas and notions and thoughts,
yes,
the stronger your muscle testing got.
Yes, it's fascinating. If I believe something about a patient, then when I go to do my muscle testing, I am going to unconsciously and sometimes consciously impose my own projection of what their health condition is and where it came from, where what I've learned over the years is I have no idea. And the more I go to that space of I don't know anything, that the body knows everything, and trusting it, then you see amazing changes.
So give me an example of when you didn't really trust it and you did have some preconceived ideas and then it totally went flat on its face.
Oh, that was very common.
Do you have one story that sticks out that you're like, yeah, there was this time when this is what happened, and it kind of blew my mind when it came back to me?
Well, I mean, the first one I think about is almost my first couple of years in practice. I had a gentleman come who was a confirmed alcoholic, even though he was a CEO of a major corporation, and handsome, well-dressed, well-mannered. And, you know, he just would be very transparent and say, you know, Doc, I'm not going to stop drinking, but, I drink a fifth of bourbon a day.
Okay.
And his blood work would stay normal, everything would stay normal. So you would think, you know what, I really better doctor his liver because it's probably pickled already. And so I started doctoring the liver from the conscious level, ignoring my results from my muscle testing, because I'm thinking, how could that help him if he's been drinking a fifth of alcohol
Okay. No,
every
that's fair.
day. So I used my conscious mind. Nothing happened. He said, I really trust you. I respect your knowledge, but nothing is changing. I said, okay. I had a little talk to myself. I said, okay, Michael, you're going to trust whatever you find. And so I found that we needed to change his water. I was like, really, dude?
And that's it.
Yeah. What's that going to do, at this early stage of my career? So we changed his water. I see him in 3 weeks. He can't believe how much different he feels. So I gave him all this nutrients, all these supplements to help him heal the liver. We changed his water, and it was like, Michael, hello. You got to remember, you don't know anything. And my greatest mentor was Dr. Ted Morter, who created the bioenergetic synchronization technique, was a great healer. That technique is still taught today through his children, who are all doctors. And, he used to say, learn as much science as you can. Go as deep in every aspect of biochemistry, organic chemistry, and then when you walk in to see a patient, forget all of it. And let the intelligence of the body guide you.
So for those of you that are watching this, when he says learn as much as you can, and then at the end of the day, it might not matter, those are two different things, right? The science and learning all those things allow you to ask better questions, deeper questions.
Absolutely.
However,
yes,
the separate thought to that is no matter how much you learn when you come into it, just let your heart guide you. And those questions of all those knowledge and science that it'll just come through you, and you won't even know why you're asking the question or where it even came from, why you thought about it.
Dr. Matthew brings up a great point. That's a beautiful place to launch into, and that is the heart. So I've taught several hundreds of doctors kinesiology, and I don't prejudge who's going to be successful and who's not, because anyone who can get into their heart is going to be successful, not in their head. Now, as doctors, or as healers, we're learning all the time to gain more knowledge, gain more techniques, learn more about nutrition, and those are great things to do. But when you do the art of kinesiology, you need to refine that historical way of operating from the mind and actually put your attention down into your heart. It's kind of like when I've talked to patients a lot about praying before meals. Mm-hmm. I say, do you pray before meals? They go, yeah. I said, well, what do you do? They go, thank you, God. I said, oh, well, that's a beautiful prayer. I said, do you ever feel any kind of energetic change when you do that? Mm. Like, do you feel a quietness? Do you feel like your heart opens, that you're really receiving gratitude and thankfulness? And they said, no. I was like, well, let's see what happens if you truly pray before your meals. Not just recite something, but go into that heart space. And we all have experiences, all of us, in our world of love, no matter what it is. It could be love of a sunset. It could be love of an ocean, love of a mountain, love of a mother, love of a father. We all have some experience somewhere in our world of love. So we know what that feels like. So when you start doing kinesiology on this new journey, and even if you've been doing it for a long time, you will see that that's a law. When you come from that space of love and really from the heart, and when you come from true love, that means it's unconditional love. So that unconditional comes from a higher part of your being. It's not a normal, I love you and I'm looking to receive something back from you. This is just going into that space of pure field of energy, of love. And when you go there, you're going to put a big smile on your face, because I'm doing it as I'm talking to you. and I can feel that beauty coming into my being stronger and stronger as I put my attention right into my heart.
Okay, so then once you have that space and that heart, then is it really that important on how your intention or your questions are or how your words are?
Extremely.
Okay, can you give examples of maybe an evolution of how you used to ask questions and maybe even today of how you ask questions, even 2 years ago, 5 years ago?
I mean, again, honest and openly, it is eternally changing. I just had a situation with myself where I was trying to see if I should attend a certain conference. And I asked if I should be going to that conference. Very straightforward, very straight question. Should I go? Should I not go? Yes or no? And it said no. And I'm wondering, I really want to go. And
So I want to stop there just for a second for us to point out to you guys that when you get an answer and you have that intuition, little nagging in the back of your head that's like something feels weird,
right.
that's when you need to dive deeper. Ask it in a different way, which is what he's about to share with you. But I wanted to point that out because
it's
that's
a
a
good
great
point.
moment, because you will also have these intuition things that come up that will be teachers for you
Yes.
of like, okay, I'm getting a yes or I'm getting a no to something, but for whatever reason it feels weird, even though that's the answer I really want. I don't want to go, or
So in that vein, what I'll do is I'll ask the same question sometimes 3 or 4 different ways to make sure I get the same answer. Whether it's yes or no, it makes no difference. But I'll ask the same question several different ways. If that intuition tells me you're missing something, there's something deeper. So ultimately, the place where the seminar was happened to be where my children live, and I hadn't had the opportunity to be with them in a while. So I asked a different question. I said, should I go to the seminar because I can see my kids? And it said yes. So I had a feeling I needed to go there. I didn't know why I needed to go, but it had nothing to do with the seminar. So the questions are always can be refined in many, many different subtle ways. For example, spirit, the divine, the intelligence that runs this body is so magnificent. And I remember my biochemistry teacher in chiropractic school had a chart up on the wall which was about 8 feet long by about 5 feet tall, and it was the Krebs energy cycle. And he said, see these thousands of biochemical reactions? The good news is you don't have to memorize it. The miracle is your body does that 100 million times every day of your life because it's creating energy. And we just sat there with our mouths open like, wow, gigabytes, kilobytes, whatever bytes is nothing compared to the creation of this divine being that we occupy during this earth walk. And the more you respect that, then you're going to understand that exactly the question you ask is exactly the answer you're going to get. For example, does this body need vitamin C? Well, number one, the body doesn't have needs. It has nutritional deficiencies that it will benefit from. So as soon as you change your question from does the body need vitamin D, does it need vitamin C, does it need any supplement, the refinement came when I thought, okay, does the body have a need or can it benefit from more vitamin C? So then I changed that question, and instead of getting all no's, I got all yeses. Just from a different angle, a different approach. So every single word is going to mean something very specifically, and we have to honor the specificity of our questions and therefore the specificity of our answers.
So is there an example of, because I'm thinking of mostly on the doctoring level for muscle testing. You gave some good stories on other things. So what about dosages? So like, is there an art to dosages that you've
Absolutely.
learned?
Yeah, because early on in my career, you'd read the label and it said, okay, 2 of these pills 4 times a day. And then, you get sometimes 3 or sometimes 4 for each dosage. And then all of a sudden I have someone come in who is so acidic that this particular green supplement, they needed 12 4 times a day. And I go, no, that can't be right. Because I had my own limitations. So what I've come to trust, both high and low. This is fascinating. I have a lot of patients who, even when it says, 10 drops, I know because of their chemistry. It's not that they're small, it's not that they're fragile. Their chemistry is they start usually with 1 drop. And even then sometimes they get a little bit of a reaction when a lot of people are taking 3 and 4 dropper fulls, which would be 100 times the amount. So biochemical individuality is a huge key to respect. And when you turn that into dosaging, you should eliminate all the parameters and ask dosaging again very meticulously and very specifically.
So the important thing to note there is the respect of their unique individuality, right? So yeah, you might read their intake paperwork and you might even know them, but you don't know what's really going on inside day to day, minute to minute, second to second, and neither do they, right? And that's why it's so important for you to trust that divine receiving that you're going to be gifted with when you're connecting with that person through applied kinesiology and muscle testing, right? So you're not trying to figure out, like he gave the example earlier about the patient that drank a lot and the liver, and that's what he thought. This is on another deeper level of even when it comes to giving out dosage and parameters of how much they're going to be taking for how long. It's so important to remove yourself because you don't know all the things, all the physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual, divinely things that are going on in their being that are gonna, of why you're getting that type of answer, why you might be getting 10 drops, even though under normal circumstances, they would need probably 2 or 3 dropper fulls. But for some reason, those 10 drops or the muscle testing that you're getting, the answers that you're getting also applies to their emotional and psychological kind of chemicals that are coming into their body. Yeah. So it's not just on a physical level, can they handle 2 dropper fulls? I'm sure they could on a physical body, but maybe they've had weird experiences with droppers. Maybe we have a lot of patients that don't like taking pills, right? So it gets unique when you just really just open yourself up to any possibility.
Any possibility.
And keep applying yourself to look at many angles and perspectives of the question that you're asking. Because the divine is always leading you in the direction of their health, no matter what.
Right.
So that's another major piece that we tell our practitioners when we're discussing the art of muscle testing, because they'll say, oh, well, I got to know, well, I got a yes, but there is no right or wrong answer. It's because the divine is always leading you to their ultimate overall health.
And we see that all the time, where we have 3 doctors at our clinic, and often I'll ask them to check something. 2 will get yes, 1 will get no, and I'll say, okay, how did you internally frame that question? And once they start telling you how they framed it, and then the other 2 practitioners would share how they framed it identical, and the third one, who got a different answer, framed it more confining to their answer. So they got the answer based on their perception. And then I asked them, okay, now change your perception to what the other doctor shared. And they said, okay, and they did that, and then they got the same answer. So the perception of how you're allowing yourself the broadest scope possible is very important. And back to the dosing, I had someone call this past Monday. They had pus in their throat. It had started Friday. They went to the ER. They didn't think I was going to be available. They started antibiotics. They had to start a new job on Thursday. Well, their dosages, because they needed to get well and functioning by Thursday, were quite high. They went through 2 different supplements, a complete bottle in 3 days. But Thursday morning, pus gone, no fever, no sore throat, able to start my job on time. And I just didn't doubt it that those heights of supplementation were key for them. You know, we think the classical historical way of getting rid of an infection is you go get an antibiotic, and then they got more progressive and they have Z-Packs, and I mean, those are 1 or 2 little pills, but they're drugs, so they can be very powerful. So the natural world, when in a crisis for the patient, naturally needs to elevate the dosages. So you can get some pretty high dosages short term. We had some other compromised patients recently that went on very, very high dosages of vitamin D, for example, a good liposomal D with K, etc., and it was magical for them. So when you listen and you trust and you're in your heart and you're specific in your questions and you're open to receiving, it'll change your practice and your results.
So what's the one thing that you would say to someone that's new starting out? What's the number one thing that you see when you're teaching people, the biggest hump that they have to get over?
It is trust.
It's trust.
It's trust.
You know, really
and
honoring the divine.
Yeah.
Whatever you're receiving is very difficult for most people.
And that's why I brought up the Krebs cycle, because all you got to do is think about that, and how could you not trust that intelligence? You know, one of the things I used to share when I would lecture was when you cut your finger, right? So when you cut your finger, in order for it to clot, I think it's 16 steps, and at each step there's a different nutrient that needs to be present in order for it to go to the next step of healing. So I used to think, if I had to memorize that, I could do that. But how would I get zinc at the 3rd step? How do I know when I'm at the 3rd step? I said, if it was up to me, I'd probably bleed to death from a little cut. You know, so that's a gross example. And then the other amazing thing about the body that I used to love is that when the blood goes through the spleen takes out all the aging and old red blood cells. Okay, and that's just a medical fact. And I used to think, how does that spleen know that? And then it goes from the spleen, and then it goes through the kidneys. And then the kidneys produce a hormone called erythropoietin, which is made when there's a decrease in the number of red blood cells, because that hormone then gets sent to the bone marrow to produce more new red blood cells. I'm thinking, so does the kidney have a counter? What kind of counter does it have to count that fast, that many red blood cells, and then it whispers, make some erythropoietin? How does that happen? And then how does it know to go to the bone marrow? So anytime you look at the biochemical reactions in the body, it's mind-blowing and just unfathomable. So the more you reference the magnificence of the vehicle that we live in, the easier it becomes to trust.
All right. So the ultimate thing is to be humbled by the body. And
Yes.
that will start you off in the best possible path for you. And, you know, always keep learning, but definitely be humbled by the miracle of the body. And I think once you do that, then the trust will come with that humbleness, and then everything else will follow. The heart, the intuition, the expansiveness of your questions, and then, you know, you want to expand it. And then once you expand it and start getting answers, then you start to narrow it down into specificity of what you're looking at and what you're trying to help and prioritize in the body. So that is the art of muscle testing in a nutshell.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you.